stop wasting your money on seed starting soil, all these premium soils that are just really compost with some other medium in to thin them out. So you're actually paying a lot more for less compost. Seed starting mixes are just kind of watered down rich compost because seeds just don't need all the nutrients that you would find in a luxury compost that you might use for a more mature or hungry plant. Well, seeds, if you think about this, tiny little creatures with their tiny little roots, their tiny little leaves, they just don't need all that nutrient. They don't need it at all. And what they need is a loose mixture of compost and medium that they can easily wriggle those little roots down into without any resistance. And the problem with some composts is that they sort of get quite hard if they don't have the medium holding open the pores, if you like, of the compost for the roots to get down. And also, too much nutrient can also be bad for a very baby plant. And so that's another reason for diluting the compost. It would save us a lot of money if we could just use our ordinary compost that we've already bought anyway in the summer and that we have left over from other gardening tasks, right? We can just convert that into our seed starting compost. It means we don't have to go out and rush out and buy something specially for growing seeds in. And bags of seed starting compost are usually really small, so it doesn't take very long before you run out, and then you have to go and buy some more. So we can just repurpose our ordinary compost instead. Right, so let's do it. How do we do it? Well, people can open up the compost with all sorts of mediums, from perlite, vermiculite, pumice, biochar, charcoal, all these things, but not all these things are necessarily suitable for seed starting. And often they're quite expensive. They're marketed as gardening products. So I don't know if you would save anything by adding these products to your premium compost to dilute it. So what do we want to do to add to seed starting? Well, the first thing we want to do is just dilute the soil, because there's no point using your premium soil for tiny little seeds in concentration. So let's just dilute it with some cheaper medium. And we also want to keep the soil loose and open for those little tiny roots to find an easy route through. We also want to add drainage because we don't want those tiny little roots that are so very shallow sitting in a puddle of slow to drain water. So what do we need? Well, I find the cheapest, best version for opening up the seed for this purpose, for diluting your compost into a seed starting mix, is just ordinary DIY store builder's sand. Okay, you want to find sand, and it's very cheap because it's nothing special. It's not in the gardening section. It's just in the, the trade section, the back section where you get all your lumber and all the bits and bobs. That's where you want to go because that's where it's cheap. It's not marketed as a gardening product, and so therefore it's just a cheap product. I bring a bag home for about £4 and it will last me the year. And I do a lot of sowing, probably going to last you 10 years if you don't do a lot of sowing. I mean, I even use it to weigh down my pergola to stop it blowing away in the wind rather than buy expensive weights. So it really is a useful thing to have in your garden anyway. Right, so how do we use it in the compost then correctly to help these seeds grow? Now, I add the sand to my compost and I eyeball it. I like to be able to see the sand in the compost. If you can't see the sand in the compost, then you probably haven't added enough for tiny little seeds. Now, for the purposes of this video, I did just work it out by measuring it out into this separate tub, and I ended up doing 6 cups. So yeah, that is a kitchen cup that broke because it's not meant for compost, so it snapped. And then I added 1.5 cups of sand. So you can follow suit until you gather, until you get a feel for it yourself and you get more confidence, then you can obviously judge it yourself. If you're transplanting seeds, I do exactly the same. But I dilute the soil slightly less with the sand. So it's just a slightly more compost to sand ratio. Now, as you can see, I've mixed up this soil, this compost, which was very brown, very rich, and when you wet it, it would stick. But once you've put the sand in there, it's just much more loose, even when it's wet. You'll notice when you water on inappropriate compost for seeds, what happens is the water just kind of like surfs over the top of the soil. That's the first thing you know. Then you'll see it comes in from the sides of the container. That's another really bad sign that your compost is not right for your seeds, for seed starting. And then eventually, of course, over time, you'll notice your seeds that may well have germinated originally will just start to die. And the reason they die is because they cannot progress their roots into the compost, because by now it's turned into a brick. And that has happened to me. And I bought really expensive organic seed starting compost, and I just don't anymore. I just convert my own multi-purpose compost left over from the summer. And then you can use it for any seed starting. I use it in the winter sowing method and in seeds that I start in the greenhouse, and it's just perfect. I've never had any problems since I've started using my own mix compost. So basically you're saving yourself journeys to the garden centre because you don't have to go and buy a special compost, and you can see that the multi-purpose compost is usually twice the size of bag than the seed starting compost, and then all you have to do then is get your £4, £3.68 bag of sharp sand, and that's just going to be able to extend it almost infinitely really until that bag of sand runs out, which could be sort of 2 years away. So you're not only saving money year after year after year by extending the multi-purpose compost you already have, you're saving yourself extra journeys and just extra hassle. You know, you don't want to have to go to the shop every time you want to start some new seeds. You can just now amend the compost that you already have handy in your garden, save yourself a lot of time and bother. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe or visit my website at www.jillbretherton.com, or if you prefer, take a look at my YouTube shop just below this video. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye.